Welcome to today's current news. Today is Thursday, April 11th, 2024. Today we will be listening to NPR. Real life Rosie the Riveters reunite in DC to win the nation's top civilian honor. BBC. The Bloody Turtle video that sparked a plastic straw revolution. AP. Meet without the animals. Real life Rosie the Riveters reunite in DC to win the nation's top civilian honor. A downtown Washington, D.C. hotel was buzzing with excited energy on Wednesday morning as dozens of women wearing red and white polka-dotted shirts and scarves, many joined by caregivers, assembled in the lobby to greet each other and confirm the day's plans. A table downstairs displayed signs of Rosie the Riveter, the headscarf-clad, muscle-flexing icon who has come to represent the millions of women who worked in factories and shipyards during World War II, filling positions previously held only by men and helping power to the U.S. victory. But the speech bubble above her head didn't read, "We can do it," as it does in most reproductions of the recruitment poster. Instead, it said, "We did it." Today's the big day, explains 98-year-old Jean Gibson, who, like many of the women in the room, has a copy of her wartime ID badge, photo, name, and location included, pinned to her shirt. "I am a Rosie, and the Rosies, at long last, after many tries, are going to be awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. 8 decades after their wartime efforts, real-life Rosie the Riveters are receiving the nation's highest civilian honor from Congress, the Congressional Gold Medal. 27 Rosies traveled from across the country to attend Wednesday's award ceremony," says Kay Lindberry, the superintendent of the Rosie the Riveter World War II Home Front National Historical Park in Richmond, California. Its nonprofit partner, the Rosie the Riveter Trust, raised the funds to support their trips. It says something that nearly 30 women in their 90s and even up to 106 are traveling to D.C. to receive this honor, Berry told NPR on Tuesday. The journey itself was a celebration for many. Several of the women flying together from San Francisco on Monday were greeted with cheers and a water cannon salute upon their arrival to D.C. One of them, Marianne Swassa, 98, said female mechanics and mechanists wearing Rosie headwear sent them off with a ceremony in San Francisco. On the plane, flight attendants wore red headscarves and played the Rosie Riveter song over the speakers. And when we got to Washington, D.C., the pilot said, "Don't worry about the fire engines. It's not a fire," she recalled with a chuckle. He says, "You're going to get what they do for the retiring pilots. They shoot water on the plane. It was all unexpected and just spectacular, and I'm very grateful." Sosa, who drew blueprints in the engineering department of the Richmond shipyard and now volunteers with the historical park, said Rosies never expected to be honored for their work. "It was a job that needed to be done. By women," she added. "It's very satisfying, I'll tell you that. Words escape me, although I'm a talker." In the hotel lobby on Wednesday morning, 106-year-old Velma Long, who worked as a clerk typist with the Navy in Texas during the war, reflected on the significance of making it to this age. She credits her love of catfish dinners and her family, which includes 9 great-grandchildren, and this moment. "I'm glad to be recognized, and I feel very important," she said. Velma Long, 106, worked as a typist for the U.S. Navy during World War II. She says she's honored to be accepting this award 8 decades later. It's long-awaited recognition for living history. For Rosies and their supporters, Wednesday's award is a long-overdue moment of recognition, and the latest in a series of efforts to preserve their stories for future generations. That work took off at the turn of the millennium, with the establishment in 2000 of the historical park in Richmond, a World War II boom town for more than 55 industries that produced more than 740 ships alone. Berry said the idea of a park honoring the history of the home front came from a number of stakeholders, including the city, the National Park Service, and Rosies themselves, many of whom advocated and wrote letters and tried to get some recognition for their part of that story. Their contributions to the war were incredibly important, and their image has become iconic, she added, and those two things melded together as the focal point for the preservation of their stories, melded with the historic resources that are still present in the city of Richmond. Millions of women worked in U.S. factories and shipyards during World War II to support the war. They're now known as Rosies because of the symbolism of Rosie the Riveter. Barry credited the late Phyllis Cole, who worked as a welder in Richmond during the war, with helping develop the park and gain recognition for the Rosies in other ways, including by writing letters to U.S. presidents for years. Then Vice President Joe Biden invited a group of Rosies to the White House in 2014, after Gold wrote him asking for a hug. Before Gold died at 99 in 2021, she and another Rosie, May Cryer, spent years separately lobbying Congress for a federal Rosie the Riveter Day, according to the trust. While it hasn't been given federal holiday status, Congress has passed resolutions in recent years designating March 21st as National Rosie the Riveter Day. The two eventually joined forces to advocate for a congressional medal honoring the Rosies. Lawmakers did introduce a bill to recognize Rosies for their contributions to the United States and the inspiration they have provided to ensuing generations. It passed the House in 2019 and the Senate in 2020, after which then President Donald Trump signed it into law. Cryer, now 98, told member station Y ahead of the ceremony, which she is attending. The World War II changed the lives of many Rosies, even if they weren't on the front lines. We weren't in the trenches, but we built everything that our fighting men needed, said Cryer, who was 17 when she helped build bombers for Boeing in Seattle, and I thought they should at least give us credit for what we did. Well, Rosies learn from the experience and what others can take from it. Sisters Ruth, Jean Louise, and Leona Johnson are pictured at Women's Army Corps Training School in this undated photo. Many Rosies considered their World War II work not only a contribution to the war effort, but an experience of growing their confidence and independence, Barry said. They speak with some regularity about knowing that they could put their mind to something and achieve it, even if it was unfamiliar to them, even if it wasn't a role traditionally held by women, she added. They did it, so they knew they could do it again. That was the case for Gibson, who was 17 when the war broke out. She later traveled from Minnesota to Seattle with her school friend Esther to become a welder at Todd Pacific Shipyards in Seattle, and later made manifests and hatch lists for the Army Transportation Corps Embarkation Center in Juneau, Alaska. She remembers working on destroyers, wearing pajamas under her jeans to stay warm during her late-night swing shifts. They wore protective face shields and braids to keep their hair away from the sparks, and were often climbing into tight spaces and working long hours. She described the work as exhilarating, but said the women doing it didn't consider it anything special at the time. I mean, everybody was doing something, and this was it, she added. Jean Gibson, 98, is one of nearly 30 Rosies who traveled to Washington, D.C. to accept the medal. During the war, she worked as a welder in Seattle and the Army Transportation Corps in Juneau. Many women were forced out of their jobs and the workforce altogether when men returned from the war. Gibson and Esther moved to California, where she started working for an insurance company, but quit after she found out that her file clerk was getting paid $5 more a month than she was, because he was a man. Gibson took a bookkeeping job next, where she worked hard and was promoted quickly. But when she asked her boss about next steps, he effectively told her, "This is it for you," expecting her to get married and have kids. So Gibson quit and went into education, getting her bachelor's, master's, and doctorate in teaching. "I had 1,000 kids because I taught school for 30 years, she laughed. She also earned a private pilot's license, describing it as a bucket list item, and joined the 99s, or International Organization of Women Pilots. Even though she lived near and even visited the Richmond site, Gibson says she didn't consider herself a Rosie until recently, when a new friend's daughter heard her story and called her one. She got involved in the park and now volunteers to share her story at weekly Rosie Fridays, where she says she is mainly focused on delivering message to younger women about the importance of equal pay. And then the other thing is that during the wartime, America was different. Everybody was pulling in the same direction. There wasn't this dissension like there is today, she adds. And that was very important for making us realize that our democracy had to be defended. And so I guess maybe I'm telling them that they can also do something. Barry agrees that Wednesday's long-awaited honor isn't just about reflecting on the pivotal role Rosies played in supporting the war effort and changing the landscape of the industrial workforce. At the same time, I think they represent more broadly what it means to step up and take action when action is required, she added. And they can serve as an inspiration to all of us to think about what it is our time requires and what we were asked to do and to take action where we can. The Bloody Turtle video that sparked a plastic straw revolution. Bloody and in pain when a plastic straw became lodged in the nostril of a turtle, a video shadowing its removal shook the world, sparking a movement to rid the world of plastic straws. In 2015, PhD student Christine Figener was on a small fishing boat off Costa Rica's Pacific coast examining an olive ridley turtle, when she noticed something strange coming out of its nostril. Curious, she started filming as one of her research colleagues began to investigate the object. At just over 8 minutes long, the video documents the uncomfortable process during which they extract a plastic straw, while blood drips from the turtle's nose. As a marine biologist, Figener focused on turtles, not plastics. However, plastic had always been an issue she encountered on the field, having witnessed turtles and other animals stuck in car tires, fishing nets, or plastic bags. I wasn't an activist, but we scientists can't stay in our ivory tower. We see and document things that need to be communicated more broadly. It's not just about understanding, it's about getting people to care and explaining what we can actually do, says Figener. Just looking at tons of plastic floating in the ocean can be a bit abstract. It's not the same as feeling the pain of another creature. It carried the message to non-scientists, showing what the statistics about plastic actually mean. The anti-plastic straw movement caught the world's attention after Figener's video went viral. So just how bad are single-use straws for the environment? Watch the video below to find out.
I'm about to show you a video that shocked the world 8 years ago. It made us all realize the harm a small piece of plastic can do.
That particular day, I actually had a colleague of mine on board, and when we got to that male, he noticed that something was like encrusted in its nose, and while he was pulling, this object became longer and longer, so he thought it might have been a tube worm, but I had a different perspective.
Plástico.
Plástico? Is it a straw? Don't tell me it's a freaking straw.
Christine's video was a catalyst for the anti-plastic straw movement that eventually became a movement against all single-use plastic in general.
That just blew it up. And who is the geek that had a whole website on plastic straws, but with me?
It felt personal. It was clear what your role to play was, right? That you had this opportunity to take action.
Single-use plastic is a particularly bad form of waste because it's made from fossil fuels, is only used for a brief period of time, is not recyclable, and can take hundreds to thousands of years to decompose. When it does break down, it turns into microplastics that we then ingest, and we're just beginning to learn how harmful that can be to our health.
Plastic is a polluter at every stage of its existence, from extraction to waste.
Some big plastic-producing businesses, like McDonald's and Starbucks, have done away with plastic straws, but those moves are largely considered greenwashing. Starbucks' new strawless lid, for example, uses more plastic than the previous straw-lid combination. Now, Starbucks' new lid is recyclable, which may sound good, but not when you hear that only 9% of the world's plastic gets recycled, and that is a generous estimate. I went around my neighborhood in New Jersey collecting straws from local eateries to see how other businesses handle the issue. While it was great to see mostly plastic alternative straws, studies suggest they aren't much better for us. A recent one in Belgium found that paper and bamboo straws actually contain more forever chemicals, or PFAS, than traditional plastic straws. But straws are just a small part of the plastic pollution problem. To give you some perspective, of the over 10 million tons of plastic that ends up in the ocean each year, straws make up just under 1%. According to the United Nations, the world produces more than 460 million metric tons each year, and that number only continues to grow.
That image that you can't get out of your head of the turtle with the straw in the nose, it was this tangible moment for the public that definitely set into motion the need for that wave of action that's much bigger.
And there's simple things we can do on our own, but just changing these bad habits.
If you want to keep using straws, try going for reusable, non-plastic straws. They're better for your health, and they're much less likely to end up in a turtle's nose.
Years before the video surfaced, Jackie Nunez had been picking up plastic straws just like the one extracted from the turtle. She regularly volunteered in beach cleanups in Santa Cruz along California's coast, and it opened her eyes to the scale of plastic pollution in the ocean. Not too far away, the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, a federally protected area, has a series of regulations to protect its diverse environment and rich biodiversity. One of the activities prohibited within the area is injuring or disturbing marine animals, seabirds, and sea turtles. Although this is explicitly stated, the sanctuary can control the fact that plastic waste does end up in the ocean, posing a severe threat to our ecosystem. The turtle had become the symbol of the plastics crisis, giving the movement a memorable, suffering face. Plastics are known to hurt wildlife in different ways, including entanglement or ingestion, as several species confuse them for food. A new study found hundreds of plastic items in the guts of dead sea turtles in the Mediterranean, where more than 40% of turtles studied contained macroplastics, pieces larger than 5 millimeters, including bottle tops and toys. According to the World Wildlife Fund, 1 in 2 marine turtles have eaten plastic, and many starve as their stomachs fill with plastic. The United Nations Environment Program states that more than 8 billion kilograms of plastic enters the oceans every year. It got to a point where I was overwhelmed by the problem, says Nunez. Among the most frequent items the volunteers picked up during the beach cleanups were plastic straws, which are particularly problematic single-use plastic items as they cannot easily be recycled due to their size, shape, and material. She realized that a powerful way was to reduce the volume of plastic consumers use. She set up a website, worked with schools to raise awareness, and asked local restaurants to stop offering plastic straws by default, and instead only offer them to customers if needed. Then in 2011, she started a global campaign, The Last Plastic Straw. We were making slow progress, she says. There weren't many people talking about plastic straws at the time. Suddenly, in August 2015, her inbox blew up with Figener's video about the distressed turtle. It was also being widely shared on social media. Nunez immediately reached out to ask for permission to use it in her campaign. Only you see this. You can't unsee it. Jackie Nunez. Figener's video was going viral. The original now has more than 110 million views on YouTube, while a shorter version has over 15 million views. Figener has since been interviewed by news outlets all over the world, and in 2018, she appeared in documentary film Straws. The film featured Figener and her video and was screened in the US, Malaysia, Greece, France, Italy, Hong Kong, Israel, and several countries in the Caribbean, among others. The documentary was also included as in-flight entertainment on multiple airlines. After a 2018 campus screening, the Appalachian State University stopped using plastic straws, saving at least 444,000 plastic straws from landfill in one academic year, the university estimated. The turtle had become the symbol of the plastic crisis, giving the movement a memorable, suffering face. Nunez, now a program manager at the Plastic Pollution Coalition, credits the video for jumpstarting the global movement and raising awareness about the impact just one plastic straw can have. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. It is very powerful, she says. While you can't reduce the shift away from single-use plastics down to a single video, Nunez believes Figener's video did contribute to a massive shift in behavior change, including towards implementing policies to estimate single-use plastic globally. Over 30 countries have enacted nationwide bans on single-use plastic items, many of them after 2015. A 2023 report by nonprofit Ocean Conservancy states that in previous years, plastic straws consistently topped the list of items collected during their annual international coastal cleanups. But more recently, their data shows plastic straws are being found at beach cleanups less frequently. In 2019, they were the third most common item collected, and by 2023, this had dropped to the 10th spot in the ranking. The report acknowledges that straws have become a hot-button environmental villain ever since this turtle video went viral. It started with straws, but it was only the start. People started questioning what else they could do, and the turtle video catapulted the whole conversation. It was the key that opened the door, Nunez adds. Suddenly, she says, there were hundreds of campaigns. In 2018, when Stephanie Mutillo was working at Starbucks, after watching the video, she started an online petition with the image of the turtle, asking the company to eliminate plastic straws. Mutillo collected more than 147,000 signatures in just a few months. The video heavily influenced me when I started the petition. I knew I needed to speak out about it, she says. Shortly after Starbucks backed her up, it felt really good to get support, and that it wasn't falling on deaf ears, Mutillo adds. By July 2018, Starbucks published a press release committing to eliminate single-use plastic straws, promising to replace them with new recyclable strawless lid and alternative material straw options around the world. That same year, others followed: Alaska Airlines, Disney, McDonald's, IKEA, and more, all announcing plans to phase out plastic straws. However, straws are just one example of many single-use plastic items, and evidence shows the global plastic pollution crisis is getting worse. Plastic consumption has quadrupled over the past 30 years. Not only is there more plastic than before, but most isn't being recycled. The OECD found that in 2019, only 9% of plastic waste was recycled globally, with an even lower rate of 4% in the US. Wegener recognizes there is still a long road ahead. We need to go for real action, not get sidetracked by greenwashing or fast solutions that are not working. I think legislation, UN treaties, and policy will lead to real change, she says. And there is some traction in that direction. In 2022, UN member states endorsed a historic resolution at the UN Environment Assembly to end plastic pollution, with the ambition of completing a draft legally binding agreement by the end of 2024. We are not going to fix the world by phasing out plastic straws, says Wegener. That was never our intention. We never aimed so small. It was like a stone that fell into the water and created little ripples that became waves. This really horrible thing inspired many people and sparked something good. Meat without the animals. Meat cultivated from cells with no need to raise and slaughter an animal is now a reality, but can it be made cheaply enough to displace animal agriculture? A familiar aroma wafted through the Believer Meats test kitchen earlier this year as research and development chef Andres Voloshin flipped sizzling strips of chicken conjured from cells. Through glass walls, he could see the large tanks where the cells grow. Scientists, not farmers, produced this chicken. Some entrepreneurs, consumers, and experts expect a lot more of the world's meat to be made this way in the future. More than 150 startups are chasing an ambitious goal: meat that doesn't require raising and killing animals, that is affordable and tastes and feels like the meat we eat now. They are part of a young industry aiming to use cell biology to reduce the environmental impact of the world's ever-increasing demand for meat and change global protein production the way electric cars are shaking up the auto industry. We are addicted to meat as a species. It's part of our evolution. It's part of our culture, said Believer founder Yaakov Nahamis, whose country Israel is an industry hub along with California and Singapore. But we thought about quantity rather than the environment, rather than sustainability. Companies making so-called cultivated or cultured meat, which is also popularly known as lab-grown meat, are trying to scale up quickly, partnering with traditional meat companies, drawing more and more investors, and breaking ground on new production facilities in the US and elsewhere. Cells under microscope at Hebrew University in Jerusalem and being lifted out of a frozen storage at Believer Meats in Israel. Wide adoption of meat from cells is nowhere near assured, however. This meat is expensive to make. There are scientific challenges, such as learning how to mimic the complex structure of steak. Government regulation is another obstacle. Only Singapore and the US allow sales of cultivated meat. And while many people who have tried it say they like it, others find the idea distasteful. A recent poll from the Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research found that half of adults in the meat-hungry U.S. would be unlikely to try it. A majority of those who said they wouldn't said it just sounds weird. Even Nahami's 10-year-old son Oren says he will only eat traditional meat. I feel bad for the animals, he said, but they are yummy.
The food production system that we have today is not really sustainable. A quarter of the environmental impact is from animal production. Cultured meat or cultivated meat is the production of meat without using the whole animal, but using animal cells. Is this cultivated meat products available for prime time? It depends how you look at it. Scaling and cost reduction is a big topic of research and a big topic of discussion still. There's still some technical challenges there, but we're very close, I think. Cultivated meat, I see cultivated meat existing in the future. You can find it next to traditional meat in your supermarkets or in the grocery store.
Can cows just stay home? The hope is that cultivated meat can someday reduce the impact of animal agriculture on the environment. Startups have succeeded in making meat. Now they are working to increase scale, lower prices, and improve recipes. How cells can be turned into a cutlet. The science behind this new meat comes from the medical world. Namias, a bioengineer, launched his company after going to lunch with a Tyson Foods executive at a conference and scribbling his method for making cultivated meat on a napkin. Unlike traditional agriculture, this process starts with cells. Depending on the company, the cells may come from a piece of tissue, a fertilized egg, or a cell bank. Various types can be used. Scientists choose cells that can self-renew and turn into the muscle and fat cells that make up meat tissue. From starter cells, they create cell lines so they don't have to keep going back to animals. These cells are placed inside vessels of various sizes, called bioreactors, and bathed in a nutrient-rich broth where they multiply. Thick, structured meat also requires a scaffold that helps organize into a shape. Changes in the composition of the broth or media and cues from the scaffolding tell immature cells to turn into muscle, fat, and connective tissue. Once the bioreactor is full at a Revot-based believer, the paste of cells is harvested and mixed with plant proteins, then pressurized and pushed out to create meat fibers, Namias said. Believer now makes cultivated chicken and lamb and has plans for beef, which is harder to make because it's more difficult to create genetically stable cell lines from bigger animals. Other companies are pursuing cultivated beef anyway. It's the focus of Believer's Reva-based competitor Alf Farms, where a scientist has scribbled a cow's face on a piece of lab equipment. The cell line for their product started with a fertilized egg from a black Angus cow named Lucy living on a California farm. Producing meat this way would also dramatically reduce the impact of meat on the environment because it would reduce the need for land of the animals and for feed. Multiple studies show that traditional livestock production is responsible for about 10 to 20% of greenhouse gas emissions. Elf Farms resident chef Amir Elan displays a small thin strip of the company's cultivated beef just after frying it. It is plated on a skewer with potato crisps. The most important thing is that the fields move forward and start reducing the destruction to our environment associated with current animal agriculture techniques, said Glenn Goddard, a biomedical engineering specialist at Boston College. It's not so easy to build a steak, but transforming the ecosystem is a distant vision. At this point, companies are still perfecting their products. Scientists and industry experts say cultivated meats have a way to go before they're indistinguishable from conventional meats, especially when it comes to the texture of products other than the burgers or nuggets. When I get a steak, I want to see a steak, said John Medvedev, the CEO of the Israeli investing platform Our Crowd, and we're just not there yet. Price is also a problem. Production costs for the first cultivated beef burger, created a decade ago by Mark Post at Maastricht University in the Netherlands, were estimated to be in hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now the university says the company he helped found, Masa Meat, has reduced that to about $10 as it works toward commercialization. For cultivated meat to take hold, such trends must continue, said Bruce Friedrich, president and founder of the Good Food Institute, a Washington, D.C. based nonprofit advocacy group focused on plant-based and cultivated proteins. If we don't have products that taste the same or better and cost the same or less, people are not going to switch, he said. But there are vexing scientific hurdles. Gade said scientists are still trying to find the best scaffolds for structured meat, which must include a way for oxygen to get to all the cells. Options include animal-based scaffolds such as gelatin and increasingly decellularized vegetables like spinach. Goddard said scientists are also working on challenges like getting the cells to adhere to scaffolds and align in the right way. Cell food, the most expensive part of the cultivated meat process, presents different dilemmas. Some media includes expensive fetal bovine serum, which is derived from the blood of a cow fetus. Other types of serum-free include costly ingredients. Startups are exploring less expensive non-animal alternatives, such as food-grade rather than pharmaceutical-grade growth factors, substances that stimulate cells to divide and grow in number. Experts expect scientists to overcome the remaining scientific hurdles, but they say shaping human perception may be more difficult. Meat grown in a lab just sounds strange. Most people connect meat production with farms rather than science labs, which influences how they view these products. In the AP NORC poll, just 18% of U.S. adults said they are extremely or very likely to try cultivated meat, and 30% said they are somewhat likely. Those under 45 years old are more likely than older adults to try it, and men are more likely than women. When those unlikely to try it were asked to choose from a list of reasons why, half said they didn't think it would be safe. That's a concern for respondent Nora Bailey, 31, a mother of 3 in rural Arkansas. I would obviously want to do more research as far as the long-term effects, since early products deemed safe may later be found to be unsafe, she said. A World Health Organization report noted several potential safety issues, such as microbial contamination at various points in the process, biological byproducts, and scaffolding that some people might be allergic to. Experts acknowledged a lot more safety testing is needed, but noted that conventional meat carries significant food safety risks, such as potential bacterial contamination during slaughter. At this point, relatively few people have tried cultivated meat. But since its approval in the U.S. this summer, a small number of diners are eating it for the first time at particular restaurants and special events. People who recently tried cultivated chicken at U.S. company Good Meat's headquarters in Alameda, California, said they liked it and would eat it again. When you bite into it, it was moist. It wasn't dry. It did have that kind of feel of chicken, taste of chicken, said Karen Hunt, who joined the taste test because she works nearby. I was pleasantly surprised, and it tasted great. She said she's not bothered by how it's made, especially when she thinks about how traditional chicken is made. The cultivated meat process seems clean, controlled, environmentally safe, and more humane, she said. Kenzuku, a nutritional science student at the University of California, Berkeley, said he would eat it regularly instead of traditional chicken if it became just as affordable. I would definitely buy it knowing that it would be more sustainable, because I think climate change is a really big problem, he said. After trying it, I personally don't taste any difference. It tastes like chicken. The few who have tried cultivated meat seem to like it, and they said it tastes like chicken, which in this case is the point.
I'm going to flip that something, so.
At first glance, I would not believe it's not chicken. It looks like it. It tastes good. I like it.
It's like really similar to real chicken, especially the texture.
It has
similar taste, I think, a little bit to chicken thigh, but I would kind of compare it a little bit to like tofu too, like a mix between the two.
It's maybe a little springier than actual chicken, but the flavor is there, obviously seared really nicely. The aroma is really similar to chicken.
I think the smell is really similar to actual chicken, and I really, really like the texture.
When will cultivated meat be widely available? Experts say a lot more people will be trying cultivated meat soon. A recent report from the Good Food Institute found cultivated meat investments tripled on average each year from 2016 to 2022. About 70 traditional meat and food companies are involved with cultivated meat in some way, and regulatory approvals in the U.S. are expected to be followed by many more elsewhere. With all of that pushing them forward, some cultivated meat companies are growing as fast as themselves. Good Meat has nearly completed a production facility in Singapore and plans a large-scale U.S. plant. Believer broke ground on its own large-scale plant last December in North Carolina. Management consultant firm McKinsey and company predicts cultivated meat could provide billions of pounds of the world's meat supply by 2030. Still, that's only around 0.5% and not nearly enough to offset rising consumption of meat from animals. Though no one expects cultivated meat to transform human diets anytime soon, some experts say population and climate pressures may make traditional meat production impossible in the long term, making cultivated meat a potential solution for a growing fragile world.